got to come to terms with this Obama thing. I mean, we really got to come to terms. Maybe we can't do that today. Maybe, Boyce, you can organize something later. But we got to come to terms with this Obama thing. Because right now, we are downright crazy.
We're talking about politics. Can we be accountable and render our politicians accountable in the name of not just skin color, integrity, decency, honesty?
I actually like to give practical solutions. So, for example, most cities, public school systems, or public libraries have public passes to go to museums, right? And so there's a kind of, so you can have a kind of quality time that's that's connected to children learning.
For me, a big part of why prison is so troublesome, so dangerous, is because it dismantles families, it breaks spirits. And it has broken so many spirits in our community because we're disproportionately, as you pointed out, represented in those spaces. So for me, prison becomes one of the key areas that we need to deal with in our community, largely because it's connected to everything else. We should be voting against these laws, these so-called get tough laws. Stuff like stop and frisk, we need to be voting against. Zero tolerance policies in schools, we need to be voting against, because it's us we're locking up.
So we have to start talking about depression and understanding that being depressed does not necessarily mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you need to take medication, but it does mean that you need therapy. People buy sneakers, people buy Gucci bags. You need to invest in your mental health.
The notion of occupying your schools, in essence, is saying that if other people who are as American as you and I are feel like they have the passport to be able to enter into the school and ensure that there's children that get in the kind of education that they want, why is that only a norm for them and not for us? And so the notion of occupying schools in our community is essentially understanding that in a public school or a charter school, or oftentimes public schools, that as a tax-paying citizen of the United States, not only do you have a responsibility to ensure that you focus on your child's education, but you have a right to do so. And each one of us has the ability to go into the schools and demand the best education for our children. So when I say occupy schools, I speak to just that.
If we could collectively be a little bit more conscious of the things that we digest into our spirits, the things that we watch. Dr. Perry said that turning the TV off would be the first step. And I couldn't agree with her more, and I work in the film industry.
As a black middle class people, or a black working class people that aspire to black middle class values and or sort of social standing, we need to be careful about how we talk about the black poor so that we don't end up as a collective group of Bill Cosbys.
When we're talking about a new paradigm and we're talking about doing things differently, it also requires recreating and reestablishing norms within institutions. It is the institution's responsibility to bend their structure to meet your specific need.
The question is not the unity. The question is the love, the care, the concern. How do we express it? How you gonna have stop and frisk policies going on for almost 15 years, 5 million precious black and brown brothers, and no moral outrage? That's not loving the young brother at all. It does not showing love. They're uncared for. And we can talk all we want, but if we don't zero in on the policy or be willing to hit the street and go to jail or die, then they look at us and say, oh, sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. Oh, you don't really love us? 40% of our babies living in poverty? Where is the love? What we don't have today are people who are willing to go that far. We want folk to be highly successful and end up being well-adjusted to injustice with their material toys and trophy wives and husbands.
What can I do to save my sons from white supremacy and racism? 3 books. 1, Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. I would then go to Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? The last book that Dr. King wrote before he was assassinated. And then I would also then suggest the late Dr. Ron Walter's book, White Nationalism, Black Interests, which is an incredibly powerful analysis. He called out the Tea Party before the Tea Party was even called out.
The chief counter to white supremacy is black empowerment. It's like if you get to a point where you are so put down by a structure that you have in front of you, then a construction of self and understanding the worth and value of self becomes the chief counter.
There's a way that we have to create our own media And, really really listen to the stories of people who are like you that are writing the stories and are making the films.
White supremacy is the biggest lie of the modern world.
Yes, yes.
It is. But the problem is that if you've been lying and your life was a lie, then your kid is liable to believe in lies, including white supremacy.
What type of programs can the community enhance, implement, or develop that will create healthy leadership for Black American girls and boys?
We have a platform now where we can coalesce under a hashtag, coalesce under a shared ideal.
Part of the new paradigm is to actually embrace the older paradigms that worked for us, that allowed us to get over, as opposed to always trying to emulate those who are in positions of power and how they do things.
Part of what we can do in terms of making these words actionable is having organizations to do things like community gardens. We need subsidies, but we also can use community gardens. We can build things with fresh fruit and vegetables right here.
We got a whole lot of smart Negroes out here come out of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. I'm not impressed. How wise, how courageous, how sacrificial, what are they willing to pay? What cost are they willing to pay? That's the history of Black people.
How do you recommend we tackle these issues without becoming burned out?
Right after slavery, 99% of all Black people work for a white person. He said today, 97% of all Black people work for a white person. When I spoke up about racial injustice, and Bill O'Reilly literally went on a strategic campaign for an entire week to get me fired from that job, the first thing I did was I turned to my brother, my business partner, and said, all right, dog, how much money we got? Where we got our money coming from? Are we gonna be all right? He said, yeah, you good. I said, man, F Bill O'Reilly then.